Hello and welcome to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel. I am Jessica, the knitter and designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits. In this video, I am going to talk all about the Along the Shores Fingerless Knits knitting pattern design. So this pattern is one of 4 knitting patterns that are fingering weight knitting patterns within the A New Home collection. So this collection is actually part of a series, and the collection within the series that comes before this is the My Forever Home collection. So that collection is all inspired by my home state, which is Montana. So it's all about the landscape really of the state, a little bit about the weather. So then now this collection, A New Home collection, which is coming November 21st, 2020. November 21st is North Carolina's birthday. Montana's birthday was just a couple weeks before when I released My Forever Home collection. So A New Home is all about North Carolina, the state where I now live, and it's also inspired by really the landscapes and kind of what we see around North Carolina that I associate as being different than Montana. So yeah, I think that's an overview of the collection and the series. This pattern specifically is Along the Shores. So as you might guess, it's related to water, and one of the big things that North Carolina has that Montana doesn't is oceanfront view. So here in North Carolina, of course, we're right along the Atlantic coast. So one whole side of North Carolina is beach line. And if you're in Montana, there's no ocean to be seen anywhere nearby. Completely landlocked. So that's one of my favorite parts about North Carolina is the ocean. I'm totally ocean girl. I love laying on the sand in the warm sun, listening to the waves crashing. I love to me it's so relaxing and soothing, and one of the few places where I feel like I can just like let go and enjoy things. So I love the ocean. And there was no way I could design a knitting pattern collection about North Carolina without incorporating the ocean. So that is what Along the Shores is all about. With each of my patterns, I always pull inspiration from the theme to really determine what the stitches are going to be that makes up the pattern. So for this pattern, it all starts, it's a cuff up. So you start with the cuff, then you work up to the top. It starts with a herringbone stitch, which is this fun stitch that essentially has one row of diagonals going one direction and then another row going the other direction, and it creates this V shape look, which of course is supposed to look like a herringfish, like the herringfish skeleton. So that's how it all starts. It's a fun start to the cuff. To the mitt. But as I do, there are, of course, alternates and customizations that you can make to the pattern. So this is the length of the pattern cuff. But I've also provided the opportunity, like if you're like, I don't want the herring cuff. I mean, I'll try not to judge. I love the herringbone cuff, but I know it's not everybody's thing. It's definitely a different kind of technique than what you normally work. It maybe feels like you're working double the stitches, but in my opinion, it's totally worth it. I love the look. But for those of you that don't love the herringbone, I do have just a plain 1x1 right option in there, and I provide the instructions for that. And in the pattern, the length for both options is actually the same. It's the length of the herringbone cuff here, but I also provide instructions on how to customize the length, so you can change the length with either cuff to make it longer or shorter. The next bit is all stockinette, which makes it pretty simple, of course, especially if you love knitting stockinette in the round. It makes it a nice mindless knit that you can do just about while doing anything else, as long as you don't need your hands. So it's great TV knitting, it's great car knitting, it's great sitting and waiting for the kids in the car line or at a sports game knitting, especially once you get to the body. So what the stockinette resembles is really just like the smooth sand, like the sand that just stretches on forever on the beaches. Like you stand on the beach and you look down and the sand just goes on forever, and yeah, there's like bumps and hills and stuff, but it's really very smooth. So that's what the stockinette resembles. And then up at the top we have our waves. So this is just a simple texture made using purl stitches to create a wave motif. And then the mitt is finished off with an I-cord bind off, which really provides it's a really pretty way to finish off a project. And what that resembles is like when you're on the beach and I'm just visualizing like at the beach, you're leaving the beach, heading for like the parking lot close by. It seems like there's always like the sand barriers. So it's just like a big mound of sand that's been built up. And so like that's what this is kind of resembling, is those sand barriers to keep the waves from going too far inland. And then of course you work the thumb with another I-cord bind off. So as far as customizations, I also provide instructions on how to make the mitt longer or shorter. So like I personally, I like it a little bit longer than some people do. A lot of my test knitters wanted theirs to end closer to like there. So I have instructions based on what's supposed to be like the average hand lengths and stuff, but I provide instructions like basically just work the stockinette until you get to X amount of distance before your desired length. So I tell you exactly how long the waves will be, and so it's a really fun knit. There's nothing difficult, even so like when you're learning the herringbone stitch. At first it's like a bit weird because it's something you haven't done before, but really it's simple. Like it's basically knit two together and knit two together through the back loop. So I found that to be a lot of fun as well. So that's all about the stitches. That's about the customization. I will say a little note here. If you notice like the thumbs here, the thumb gusset and stuff, that was adjusted in testing, so the thumb gusset is longer, so it doesn't quite look like this anymore. It probably looks a little bit more normal in the actual pattern now. So that's the inspiration. That's the stitches. I'd say it's a perfect adventurous beginner knitter pattern. The most complicated part is if you work the most complicated part is going to be the I-cord bind off. If you try that and decide it's just too difficult, of course, go ahead and just bind off with the regular bind off. But I do provide link tutorials in all of my patterns for anything that I think might be new to you. So I walk you through each of those techniques to help you really complete the pattern confidently. And if you ever have questions, you're always welcome to reach out to me. My information is in the pattern. So the most difficult part is going to be the I-cord bind off. The second most difficult part is going to be the herringbone cuff. But there's also the alternative. You can do the ribbing instead. So I think all of these techniques are completely doable for an adventurous beginner who's really wanting to extend their skills and learn something new. It's all knit in the round, so if you're comfortable with knitting in the round, it's going to be an even easier experience for you. So the yarn that I used is this really pretty, can you tell it looks like aquamarine with blues and greens. It's really pretty. The yarn is dyed by Queen City Yarn. So all of the yarns within the A New Home collection were all from indie dyers local to North Carolina. Queen City is actually the nickname for Charlotte, which is the area where I live in. So Queen City Yarn is local to North Carolina, and this is their On the Dock colorway, and it's their Noda sock base. So just another little tidbit, Noda is actually a nickname for an area of uptown Charlotte. So I love all of their little references to stuff that's local, and of course now that I live here, I'm catching on to the references. So anyway, this is On the Dock Noda Sock Base by Queen City Yarn. If you're looking for color suggestions, I write a blog post for each of my patterns. So within the pattern itself, I have a link to this blog post, and on each of the pattern pages, I also have a link to this blog post. This blog post includes color suggestions and yarn alternative recommendations. So for the color suggestions, that's the first half of the blog post. I have colors that I have selected from Queen City Yarn's colors that they have available on their website. I have selected colors that I think will look great with this pattern. The main thing with the pattern is that you don't want anything very dark, and you don't want anything that's too colorful, like a whole lot of vibrant rainbow colors. You probably wouldn't really be able to see the cuff and the wave motif as well. The more solid and the lighter the colors, the more the stitch patterns will show up. But as you can see, like this is a pretty colorful yarn, a variegated yarn, and I still think it looks great. So I have color suggestions from Queen City Yarn that I chose at the top part of that blog post. The second part of the blog post is all about alternative yarn recommendations. So this is especially helpful if you are looking for more affordable yarn options to work the pattern with. The yarns are typically from like bigger box stores that are able to provide yarn at cheaper prices. So that's like Michael's, Knit Picks, Webs, sites like that. I include on there like the yarn information and a little bit of price information so that you can kind of weigh the pros and cons of each one and compare those quickly just on that blog post. Now, I do not provide specific color recommendations for each yarn brand, but what I recommend is if you see like a color palette that you love from my color suggestions from Queen City Yarn, I recommend finding something kind of similar to that in the affordable yarns section. And again, like any solid, any tall, those are all going to work well with the pattern. If you ever have any questions on choosing yarns or anything like that, of course you're always welcome to reach out to me. If you have any questions during the pattern or anything like that, of course you're always welcome to reach out to me as well. So that is yarns. So we talked about design inspiration, we talked about knitting techniques, we talked about yarn. We did not talk about sizing. So I have in the pattern 5 sizes. They're all considered adult sizes: extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. These hand circumferences range from 7 to 9 inches, and it's on every ½ inch. I'm going to guess that most like larger children, teens sizes are probably going to fall close to that, the small, extra small size within the pattern. Just thinking like a lot of kids, especially girls, are done growing like middle school, early high school age. So even though it says adult, you know, some of those child ages can be included in there. So like I said, the hand circumferences range from 7 inches to 9 inches, which is 18 centimeters to 23 centimeters. And then I also include the mitt length in all of the pattern pages. So the mitt length is from the bottom of the cuff to the top of the bind off. Like we discussed, the cuff, you can customize the length, and the body, you can customize the length. So that just tells you how much, if you just work the pattern as is, how long it's going to be. But again, those are totally customizable. So if we talk about pattern pages, I have provided a link down below in the description box that is the pattern page on my website. So that talks all about the Along the Shores Fingerless Knits pattern. It talks about knitting techniques, it talks about yarn requirements, it talks about the knitting experience, it talks about the perfect situation to be wearing your mitts for. It talks about all of the information around the mitts, pretty much. In the yarn recommendations part, I have the yarn requirements part. I have the blog link included to the post that has those color and yarn suggestions. I also have multiple places on the pattern page. I have the links so you can purchase the pattern. So that's Ravelry, LoveCrafts, and Payhip. So those are all of the purchasing options right now. If anything changes in the future, of course, all of that will be updated and you don't have to worry about it. So that's how you can find all the information. That's how you can purchase the pattern. If you still have questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer those. But I really hope that this video answered most, if not all, of your questions. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it makes you excited to knit the mittens, or the mitts. I really think it's a fun pattern. It's really enjoyable. It's a nice combination of mindless, simple, and also simplistic but interesting and engaging patterns. So I really like having something that, you know, I can be concentrating on something else. I can be talking to somebody while knitting, but then it's not just stuck in it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, informative, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button, and go ahead and subscribe to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel for more of my content. I provide knitting tutorials for knitting technique tutorials for each of my patterns here on YouTube, and I also provide a design overview video for each of my patterns. So that's exactly what this video is. I have a video like this for each of my patterns that really talks about the pattern in depth. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you around, and I hope you have a happy time knitting.